All right, hey guys, Mr. Kyle, Myers Mathematics, and let's just jump right into it. Number one is going to be -2 plus 3 is 1. For number two, we have -21. Okay, and I'll pause here because if you're just starting to do this, if you're just starting to learn this, you might be like, well, but how? Like, how, why, what, who, where? If you are somebody watching this and you just want the answers, you know you can just Google this, right? You can just Google this worksheet and find all the answers that way. So if you're looking for just the answers, then it'd be way faster to just do that. So go do that if that's what you're. But if you're here to try to understand this, let's talk about a couple different ways that you might be able to understand this. So -2 plus 3 ends up being +1. How? How is that? Well, there's a few different ways to understand what's going on here. When I say there's a negative number, it's like the opposite of a regular number, right? So -2 is the opposite of 2. And there's a lot of different ways to understand what that means, right? So like, let's say you have $2 in your wallet. Well, if you have $2 in your wallet, that's +2. But if you owe somebody $2, that's -2. That's -2. That means you need to give them $2. So it could mean that, right? It could mean that you owe, or that you're in the red, right? Which is, monetary term. But what else, right? So like distance. Distance. Well, distance is positive normally, but what about, like, if I wanted to measure how far north I am from something, right? So like let's say you think about your house, and you're at your house, you travel north 5 feet. It's +5. But if you travel south 5 feet, how many feet north are you? Well, you're not, right? So you could just say that, but you're -5 feet north is another way to say it, right? So sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes you just be like, well, why don't you just say it that way, right? But that's what negative numbers are. They're the opposite. They have the opposite meaning. So they oppose each other. And that's where subtraction comes in, right? So if the numbers have opposite signs, then they're opposing each other, right? They're opposite forces opposing each other. You're going to be subtracting. If the numbers have the same sign, -14 plus -7, those are both negatives. Those are combining forces, right? -14, negative. It could be like money again, right? Like you owe somebody $14, you owe somebody else $7, so altogether you owe $21. Add them up. You can think about it that way, right? Or how about this? What about a number line, right? So here's a number line: 0, 1, 2, 3. And this direction is the positive direction. This direction is the negative direction. So if it's a positive number, if I start at 0 and I want to graph a number on this line, if I start at 0 and I want to graph 2, I have to travel 2 spaces to the right. So the right is the positive direction. If we start at 0, which you do, you start at 0, and you want to get to 2, you go 2 spaces to the right from 0 to get to 2. Or how about if I want to go to a negative number? Well, if I start at 0, then I would travel to the left. So traveling to the left is negative. Okay, well, with that in mind, then this is saying left 2. So over here would be -2. Left 2, 1, 2. Left 2, right 3. 1, 2, 3. So then we're at 1. And you could actually do it the other way around as well. You could say, okay, well, this is saying 3, so I'm going to travel right 3. 1, 2, 3. Right 3. And left 2. 1, 2. Either way, you get to 1. 1 is the answer. So those are a couple ways to think about it. one of the ways I like to think about them is also with signs. So when you're adding or subtracting, adding, if I can spell adding, adding or subtracting. I'm going to run out of space here, subtracting. I'm just going to put, can't seem to spell today. Adding or subtracting. I'm going to abbreviate there. Run out of space. If I'm adding or subtracting, here's how you do this. So we're going to use some smiley faces. So the eyes, I'm going to give you the key first. Okay, so the eyes are the signs of the numbers. Signs of the numbers. And the mouth is whether you add or subtract. It tells you whether you add or subtract. You add or subtract. Now I've got space to write it out. There we go. Okay, so here's how it works. And I'll use some color coding here. So green for positive, red for negative. All right. So you could do plus plus, right? You could do plus minus. You could put a minus right next to there. Or you could do minus plus, or you could do minus minus. And then if I want to add or subtract. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and do the other eyes here. So plus plus meaning I'm going to have two positive numbers, positive and negative, negative and a positive, or a negative and a negative. Okay. So an example of plus plus might be like 3 plus 2. All right, 3 plus 2 is 5. I'm just adding. That's it. Right? Nothing scary, nothing crazy is going on there. What about positive 3 minus 2? Well, that's regular subtracting. 3 minus 2 is 1, right? It's only these bottom two that you have to really worry about, right? Because what if I said negative 3 plus 2? Well, negative 3 plus 2 is still subtracting. Just like a positive and a negative, subtracting. If I have plus plus, that's adding. For number 2, this is minus minus. I'm also adding. So if the smiley faces and frowny faces thing helps, then awesome. The other way to think about this exact same chart is if the signs are the same, you add. Signs, same, then you add. If the signs are different, I'm going to abbreviate again. If the signs are different, then you subtract. All right, so that's kind of saying the same thing. So it's the chart, but in word form. If the signs are the same, add the numbers. If the signs are different, then subtract them. Okay, so that's a lot of different ways to understand this. Let's actually flesh out some of those. So let's switch to a different color here. Let's go to like a lighter blue. So 3 minus negative 8. The other thing, too, about signs is that if you have two signs next to each other, you actually multiply them is one way to think about it. If I'm subtracting a negative, that's sort of like a double negative. You know, they tell you in English class to don't never use double negatives, right? So when you use a double negative in English, it's like it's improper, because isn't a double negative just saying that you are doing something? But normally people don't mean it that way. If you use a double negative in a sentence, normally people mean it as a single negative, but really it's sort of like you're just confirming. Like if I'm saying I ain't never going back to that store. So you are? You are going back to the store? And that's how, because that's how it works in math. When you have a double negative, it makes a positive. And actually that was the same thing with number 2. I could have switched that to a minus sign, because right here plus minus, that makes a minus sign there as well. And that's how you would interpret the smiley faces if you're multiplying or dividing. So these same smiley faces can be used for multiplying and dividing, except the eyes. So the eyes are the same, actually. The eyes are the signs of the numbers. But the mouth would then represent the sign of the answer for the product or the quotient when you're multiplying or dividing. So if I interpret the mouths as the sign of the answer, then for number 3, a minus minus makes a plus, so this is actually 3 plus 8. Okay, and now it's a lot easier. 11. What about this? Negative 9 plus 14. Well, that's this example. It's a negative and then a positive. You can switch numbers. Even if you're subtracting, you can switch as long as you keep the sign, any signs that are in front of the number. And this is going to make way more sense if I write it in reverse. 14 minus 9. And this is another strategy. So the strategy I'm using here is basically like if you have this sign, if you have a negative and then a plus, then flip it so that you have a plus and minus. And if you have a negative negative, then just treat it like it's a positive. Just treat it like it's plus plus. So that's kind of another strategy I'm using here. Oh, by the way, 14 minus 9, right? What would that be? 5, right? So 5 for that one. All right, next. Negative 8 minus negative 2. So first, if you have a double negative, double negatives are actually positives. And this might make a little bit more sense if I do 2 minus 8. Except what is 2 minus 8, right? I don't know. It's a little weird, right? Normally you subtract a bigger number into a smaller number. Well, there's a couple ways to think about it. You might just intuitively be like, oh, this is negative 6, right? And then just be done. Because it is. It is negative 6. But if you aren't intuitively thinking that's negative 6, here's another way you could think about it. 2 minus 8 is the opposite of 8 minus 2. If I flip the numbers, then I'll get the opposite of the answer I'm supposed to get. 8 minus 2 is 6. So the answer is negative 6. That's one way to do it. So for instance, 5 minus 8, because isn't that what that is? 5 plus negative 8. A plus and a minus are just 1 minus. 5 minus 8. Now let's try this trick again, except this time I'm going to show you a different way. I'm going to show you a couple different ways. And then what I want you to do with all these different ways is don't do every single different way unless you really need to figure out really which one works best in practice for you. But once you figure out a way that works for you, then just use that way. Right? So I'm not demonstrating how I would expect somebody to work out all of these problems. I'm doing this for the sake of you understanding what's going on here. So 5 minus 8, if I flip it around, here's what I can do. Watch this. I can just put a minus right here. Because 8 minus 5 is the opposite of 5 minus 8, so I just put a minus here. That way I don't forget to do it later. 8 minus 5 is 3. So the answer is negative 3. Okay? So a lot of little tricks you can do here to make this work. All right, moving on. This is a minus and a minus, so I'm adding. And the other thing you can do, too, is I can just write this off to the side here. I can just add them. And then remember, the answer is going to be negative because I'm adding 2 negatives, so I'm going to get a bigger negative. If you add 2 negatives, you'll always get a negative for an answer. If you add 2 positive numbers, you'll always get a positive number for the answer. If you subtract, though, you might get a positive or you might get a negative. You could get either one. It's kind of up in the air. Depends on the numbers. Whichever number is further from 0, the sign of that number is the sign of the answer. That's a little weird to say it that way maybe, but that's one way to think about it. Sign of the bigger number or the number further away from 0. Oh, did not mean to do that. Pulled up the news. 27 plus 24. 7 plus 4 is 11. 2 plus 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So the answer is negative 51. All right, same thing here. We're just going to add them up. 40 plus 41 is 81. So it's negative 81. Okay. Moving on. So this is plus 38 plus 17. Right? It's supposed to be 17 there. 8 plus 7 is 15. 3 plus 1 is 4 plus 1 is 5. Positive 55. Over here, I'm adding two negatives again, so it's 44 and 9. 9 plus 4 is 13. 4 plus 1 is 5. And then it's negative because I'm adding two negatives. All right, that's it for that one. Negative, negative, negative. So many negatives. All right, and negative make it positive. This is negative 16 plus 36. And if I write this as a subtraction with the larger the number further from 0, if I write the number further from 0 first, well, that's exactly what that is. Negative 16 plus 36 is 36 minus 16. So this is just going to be the answer, 20. Then here I've got two minuses, so I'm adding because I have two minuses, so I'm adding those numbers up. And then remember, if I'm adding two negatives, I'll always get a negative for the answer. Negative 16 minus 6 plus negative 5. Okay, now we've got three things, but no worries. Don't try to do them all at once unless you're adding, which actually in this case we are adding because they're all minus. Minus 16, minus 6, minus 5. Right, plus minus makes a minus. So we are adding them all up. We can do that all at once. You can add all at once. You can't subtract all at once. So 6 plus 6 is 12, plus 5 is 17. So negative 27 is the answer. Always make sure you have the right sign. If you're adding, then you'll either have a positive or a negative. If you're adding positive numbers, you get a positive number. If you're adding up negative numbers, you get a negative number. Okay, and then you have a little bit of a mix. So number 13 was the first time we had three things. 14 is the first time we have a mix of things. So what I like to do is I normally like to, if I have a lot of numbers, so with just 3, it's kind of up in the air. But when you have a lot of numbers, I like to add up all the positives and add up all the negatives, and then I have one subtraction to do at the end. It's less work that way. But for something like this, it's like, you're not really saving any time doing it one way or the other. Also, you know, PEMDAS, right? So addition and then subtraction, which makes sense, I think. If you add up all the positives, add up all the negatives, then you only have one subtraction problem at the end to do. So I think that makes sense. But here it doesn't really matter because there's only three things. 15 minus 13 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. If we did it the other way, if we add up all the positives, 15 and 2 are both positive. So you get 17. And then there's no negatives to add up. There's only one negative, so then we would just go straight to the answer. So it'd be 17 minus 13, which is 4. So either way you get 4, right? All right. So let's see. So then this is 16. That's a positive. That's a positive. So we got a bunch of positives. We can do all of these all at once. Add them all up. 6 plus 3 is 9. 9 plus 5 is 14. 1, 2, 3. We're adding up a bunch of positives, so positive 34 is the answer. Negative 7 plus 2 minus 9. Now we've got two negatives and a positive. So there's no other positives besides 2. Negative 7 and a minus 9. Minus and negative are almost kind of sort of the same thing. So that's why I'm treating it like that. You could also have said plus a negative 9, and it means the same thing. So minus and negative are essentially the same thing. Negative 7 plus 2 minus 9. So we add up the negatives first. I think that makes the most sense. Add up the negatives first. So that's 16. So it's negative 16. Then we do one subtraction problem. So this would be 2 minus 16. Or negative 16 plus 2. The 16 is further away from 0, so we want to put that one first. If we do 16 minus 2, that's pretty easy. That's 14, but is that what that's saying? Well, no. 2 minus 16 or negative 16 plus 2, those are saying the same thing. 16 minus 2 is not the same. It's the opposite. So that means that the answer should be negative 14. All right, moving on. So we've got negative 11 plus 14 plus 7. 14 plus 7, we'll do that first. That's 21. Then we do 21 minus 11. And that's 10. Bing, bang, boom. Now we've got 4 things. We've first problem with 4 things in it. We've got 2 positives and 2 negatives. This would be a good time to do what I was talking about earlier. Put your positives together first. Then put all your negatives together. Then you just have one subtraction problem at the end. Adding is easier than subtracting, I think, because you can add up a bunch of numbers all at once. You can't subtract up a bunch of numbers at once. So, add up our positives. Add up our negatives. Right? We're adding those up as well. 7 plus 12 is 19. Negative 1 plus negative 7, or 1 and 7, make 8. Negative 8. And then we have one subtraction problem to do. 11. There we go. All right, not bad, right? We just put up all of our positives, all of our negatives, and then we can add them all up. Each of the positives, each of the negatives, and then we have one subtraction. I think that's really probably the best way to do it. So this is going to be 6 plus negative 7 plus negative 5 minus negative 2. We have a double negative there. You definitely want to fix double negatives. You don't have to fix the problem if it's like a plus minus or a minus plus, especially a plus minus. Minus plus, that's kind of unnecessary. But you don't really need to fix those. You definitely want to fix a double negative, because that's actually a plus. Okay, so then we've got 6 plus 2. That's 8. All right, so those are our positives. These are both our negatives, so we have negative 7 plus negative 5. It's negative 12. And then 8 minus 12, what's that? Okay, well, what's 12 minus 8? 12 minus 8 is 4. If we want to know 8 minus 12, then it's the opposite, negative 4. All right, here we've got a 5 and a 12. Those are the positives, 17. Negative 5 and a negative 3. Add those up, you get negative 8. 17 minus 8 is 9. Next, we have purple. So we have a negative 11, a negative 8, a positive 1, and a positive 6. All right, so 1 plus 6, 7. Negative 11, negative 8. Add those up. Negative 19. 7 minus 19, how about 19 minus 7? That's 12. But we're actually wanting to find out 7 minus 19, which is the opposite. So that's why it's negative 12. 10 plus 10 minus 7 minus 5. 10 plus 10 is 20. Minus 7 minus 5 is minus 12. 20 minus 12 is 8. See how easy this can be? Not so bad, right? All right. Oh, I spoke too soon. Decimals. All right. So here's what we do. We're still going to do all the same stuff we were doing earlier. But when you're adding or subtracting, you want to line up the decimal places. If you don't see a decimal place, it's right after the number. So this would be 6 and 3.98. All right, so if we're going to subtract, what are we subtracting from? Nothing. We need to borrow. We need to borrow. We need to borrow 10 units. So if I take 6 down to 5, that means I'm borrowing 10 units of it, basically. If you go over to the right, there's 10, it takes 10 decimal places, right? 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 1. If I count to 10 with single decimal places, I get 1. And that's what I'm doing. I'm borrowing 1, and that gives me 10 decimal places. Then I need to borrow from that to get 10 decimal places next to that decimal place, because it would be 0.01, 0.02, 0.03, 0.04, 0.05, 0.06, 0.07, 0.08, 0.09, 0.1. So same thing there. 10 minus 8 is 2. 9 minus 9 is 0. 5 minus 3 is 2. And I get 2.02. Right? So that's the classic way to do it. The other way to do it that's more like Common Core friendly would be to break it into pieces. We don't need to do that on here because everything works out pretty nicely. 8 minus 5 is 3. 5 minus 2 is 3. The answer is 3.3. Right? Everything breaks down pretty nicely there. But we can also break up the number into pieces, which is kind of what we're doing with the borrowing method. Kind of, sort of. So, you know, there's that. But, okay, so 1.8 plus 3.7. Okay, so we're going to be adding 0.8, 3.7. Add 8 plus 7 is 15. 3 plus 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. 5.5. 7 minus 2.8. Okay, so let's do that thing I was talking about. So 7 minus 2.8. Well, 7, let's step back for a second. So 7 is 6 plus 1. Right? And 1 is 10 decimal places. Right? So if I do this, I could do this. I could say well, 2.8 is also like 2 minus 0.8, or 2 and 0.8, right? So 2 and 0.8. 2 is equal to 2 plus 2.8, I should say. 2.8 is equal to 2 plus 0.8. So this is like more of a Common Core way to do it. So you split up each number, and then I would say, okay, well, let's subtract the wholes. 6 minus 2 is 4. And then subtract the parts. I need an extra part here because I have a 0.8 here. And I didn't have any parts to the 7, so I have a part here to the 1. This is 10 decimal, 1.0, right, minus 0.8, which is 0.2. 1.0 minus 0.8 is 0.2. So you subtract each of those parts, and then you put them back together. Now, I'm not a huge fan of that method. And there's different ways to do it too. There's different ways to break up stuff, but that's how you might do it if you wanted to do it kind of like Common Core kind of stuff. I mean, however you learned it is however you learn it, right? So if you're more comfortable doing it that way, then all power to you. And I'll leave it at that. So now we've got multiple things. All of these are negative though. That's negative. That's negative. That's negative. Right? Remember, plus minus is a minus. They're all negative, so we just add them all up. You can add them all up. 5.4. We'll just add them all up. 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 4 is 14. 7 plus 5 is 12, plus 1 more is 13. And since I'm adding up a bunch of negatives, I have a negative for an answer. Okay, this is actually a plus, so I'm actually adding up a bunch of positive numbers here. So 4, I did the 1.7 first for some reason, whatever. 0.8 and 4.013. Right, so add them up. You don't need to put zeros in there if you're adding. If there's nothing there, there's just nothing there. You only need to put zeros in there if you're subtracting. So this is just 3 plus nothing, 1 plus nothing. 8 and 7 make 15. 4, 5, 6. And there you go. And they're all positive, so the answer is positive. All right, we're like full circle back to blue here. I'm going to do blue, and then I'll maybe just use black for the last two, I guess. All right, fractions. Fractions, here we go. Okay, so different dynamic. With decimals, you want to line up the decimal. With fractions, I mean, you know, we got to do what you got to do. If it just depends on the denominator. Fractions are so terrible, right? So there's sort of like several different cases. You're trying to get the denominators to be the same, right? So that's the goal. So step 1, are the denominators the same, right? So I would start with that. So are the bottom numbers, are the bottoms the same? are the bottoms the same? Because if yes, then you just add or subtract the tops, right? So then you just add or subtract the tops. Add or subtract the top numbers, and then you keep the denominator the same. You don't add the denominators. Keep bottom the same. Keep bottom the same, right? That's how you normally are supposed to add and subtract fractions if the denominators are the same. If they're not, no. That looks more like a mo, but that's a no. If the bottoms are not the same, okay, well then, is one a multiple of the other? Can I multiply to get to the other one? Right? So you either multiply. So you multiply one to get to the other. So you can multiply. You either multiply one bottom. We'll multiply one bottom to get the other. To get the other bottom. Or so that would be like for number 30. For number 30, I can multiply 2 by 2, and I get 4, right? So you multiply one and the top, right? So a bottom and top, and top. You can't just multiply the bottom and the top. Multiply the bottom and the top in order to get the bottoms the same. So that's one way to do it. If they're not, if they have some common factors, which actually I don't have any out of these 4 problems, we don't have any examples. But let's say you had a denominator of, let's say you had a denominator of 4 and a denominator of 6. Oh, that's like the worst, because then they have common factors, but you can't multiply 4 to get to 6, and you can't multiply 6 to get, not with whole numbers, right? So then if that happens, then you have to find the LCM. So if they have common factors, so common factors, then we want to find the LCM. Find LCM, least common multiple. I'm not going to show you how to do that on this one because we don't have any of those, and for time reasons. But that's what you would do. So find the LCM, and then you multiply to that. You multiply the bottoms. Multiply the bottoms to that. Okay. Then there's the third option, and the third option is the one that trumps the other two because it isn't as fast as the other two options all the time. Option 1 and option 2 are faster if you can do them. But you can do option 3 no matter what, whereas with option 1 and option 2, they're kind of it's just specific to the scenario. Option 3. This is the one that rules them all. You do what I like to call crisscross applesauce. You do bottom right times top left. Then you keep the sign in the middle. So keep the sign in the middle. It's either going to be plus or minus. Then you do bottom left times top right. I'm going to show you this in action as well, so don't worry about it if this looks a little confusing. Bottom right times top left, plus or minus, keep the sign in the middle. Bottom left times top right, all over the bottom left times the bottom right. You just multiply the bottom numbers. And that is the way to do it. Just ultimately, that's the way to do it. With 1 and 2, all you're doing is getting the bottoms to be the same. Once the bottoms are the same, then you can add or subtract the top numbers and keep the bottom the same. But step 3 does all of that for you. It just goes straight to the answer. So step 3, that method is a really nice method. Let me show you how this works in action here. So this minus sign is attached to the 3, right? But I'm going to keep the plus in the middle there. So it's going to be 5 times negative 3, right? So bottom right, 5, times top left, negative 3. That's negative 15, right? Next, keep the sign in the middle, plus bottom left times top right, right? Bottom left times top right over the bottom left times the bottom right. 2 times 5 is 10. Negative 15 plus 6 is 1 over 10, and then you get the answer. That's it. Here, number 30, this is actually a minus and a minus, right? So that's 7/4 plus 1/2. Now, are the bottoms the same? No. So can we multiply one bottom to get the other? Yeah, we can multiply 1/2 by 2 over 2. So then we would say 7/4 plus, minus makes a plus. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2/4 is 1/2. Same thing, right? 2 slices out of 4, 1 slice out of 2. We're talking about pizza. 7 plus 2 is 9. 9/4. 9/4 is the answer. All right. What about this one? All right, we can do that trick again. So 1 times -4, or 4 times -1, I should say. -4. 5 times 7. 5 times 7, 35. Over 5 times 4. -4 plus 35, same thing as 35 minus 4. 35 minus 4 is 31. There's the answer. Over here, these already have the same denominator. So we don't need to do anything. We just go straight into, add or subtract the top numbers, keep the bottom the same. 2 minus 4 is -2. And then keep the bottom the same. All right, and that's it. So if this has been helpful, definitely go check out some other videos that could be helpful for you as well. This is a series on Algebra 1 worksheets. I'm doing all the Algebra 1 worksheets that are on the specific website where you can get them from. There could be other worksheets out there for Algebra 1 that I maybe don't cover. Let me know if I'm missing any, because there are other ones. But the ones that specifically you can grab from the website, the Kuta software website, are the ones that I'm doing. And all the Algebra 1 stuff. So it's everything in Algebra 1. This is an earlier video that I actually missed, because I thought I did this video, but I did one just like it. So I'm coming back to this one. But I'm rounding out the series. I'm almost done. I've got like less than 10 more now. There's so many. So definitely go check out those other ones. And hey, if you want other content like this, or if you want this, if you want this actual, with all the work in it or anything like that, I'm gonna put all of this stuff on my website, myersmathematics.com. Go to my website, myersmathematics.com. Go check it out. You can grab stuff like this. I've got a guide called the 5 Math Mistakes Everyone Makes and How to Avoid Them. Check that out. It's right on the front page. You can grab it as soon as you get to the website. Or there's a bunch of other stuff too. I'm going to start making courses, just regular courses, Algebra 1, geometry, things like that. I'm also going to have materials for people who want to do tutoring. So if you know somebody who wants to make some extra income, then they can go on there. They can get some resources on how to be a tutor. If you want to learn how to do that, you can go there. Just everything to do with not only like learning math, but also teaching it as well. So go check that out. Go check out some other stuff on YouTube. Leave me a like, a comment, subscribe, turn on the bell for notifications, all the things, right? And do all of that stuff, and let me know. Give me some feedback. I really, really, really like feedback. Let me know anything. I mean, just you can tell me that my voice sounds too robotic. My voice is actually a little hoarse right now, so that could also be contributing to that. But I'm always like trying to mess with sound and make the sound work out and make the light work out and just make everything work out. So let me know about that, or let me know if you want to see a specific video, or if you have a problem you can't solve, a word problem you can't solve and it's not on Chegg, or you don't feel like paying for Chegg. Shoot it over. So you can put, I think you can attach pictures and YouTube comments. But if not, just shoot me an email. My email is in the description as well. And I'll see you again in another video real soon.